Can I just ask a question to both of you, which is motivated by my concern that there's a false polarization between tradition and the individual. I mean, my reading of the Enlightenment is that it wasn't just simply Hume, but even people like in the 19th century, like Mills, who really represented liberal ideals in its most systematic form, Spencer, and all these individuals recognized the importance of tradition, but that's just by the by. My question is very simple. At a moment when both tradition and the individual is under fierce attack, when there's a veritable civilizational war being waged against both of these kind of concepts, which are crucial, I think, for everybody in this room. I don't think there's anybody in here who doesn't appreciate the role of the individual. There's nobody in this room, I think, who doesn't understand that their roots in some way or shape or form constitutes who they are. Human beings, by definition, are historical beings with clear roots. Isn't it the case that everybody in this panel and this room has got something in common in having to defend a civilizational perspective, a civilizational outlook that gave meaning to tradition and gave meaning to the individual? And it seems to me that our differences aside, we got to find a way that instead of having a false battle between these two concepts, there are some genuine differences. We have got to find a way of giving a validation and an authority to these two concepts, because otherwise we're going to lose the battles from within the West by people who are against both of these concepts.
But here's the challenge. There are people in this room who would like to impose their values on me. There are people in this room who would like to tell me how to live my life. There are people in this room who would like to tell me who to trade with and who I can't trade with. There are people in this room who would like to limit my ability to move from place to place and where I should live and where I can't live and where I can't live. So there are people in this room who might say they're pro the individual, but then want to limit me as an individual in terms of how I live and where I live and what I consume and who I engage with and who I associate with. They want to limit my freedom and my liberty, and that is a challenge. And that's why it's important for us to have a robust debate and to have these disagreements aired, and maybe we can come to agreement and maybe we can't. But I'm not willing to give up, in the name of fighting the left, to give up my liberty over here in order to fight. I've got two parties who are trying to take away my liberty. I get to choose. Maybe you guys want to take away less of my liberty than the left. But I'm not willing to give up any of my liberty, at least not until, and I'm willing to fight in order to preserve it. So we should have this discussion as debate. I should be in a position to at least try to convince you to leave me alone. Because that's all we're asking for, right? Is leave the individual free to pursue his own life and don't impose your values on them. And as long as you're willing to do that, I don't care what values you pursue. I don't care what traditions you follow. You can follow any traditions you want, as long as you don't force me to follow the traditions you think are appropriate.
James. I don't think I've ever quoted the English socialist R.H. Tawney favorably before, but I'm going to do so now. Freedom for the pike is death for the minnow. It's all very easy to say, I'm going to move 5,000 miles away from my parents because, I want to move to this beautiful island. And wonderful. That is not the case for everyone. That is not the case for every section of society. And the conservative point of view is that we are all in this together. That does not mean, that's not a recipe for collective coercion. It's certainly not a recipe for cosmopolitan coercion, that we're seeing increasingly among the globalists in Davos. We passionately resist that. But we have to think of ourselves as a national community, as a moral community. And that is sometimes going to involve constraints on individual freedoms. You'll all be familiar with the tragedy of the commons. The libertarian solution to that seems to be to just get rid of the commons. I don't see how that really improves things. If I suddenly take some glorious piece of the national forest in the United Kingdom and it's all privatized, I might very well just cut it all. Maybe the rational thing to do would be to cut it all down and sell the timber and make a profit. When in fact the rational thing to do would be to open up some camping holidays and hand the thing on to my children and my grandchildren and so on and so forth. So look, there are you can consult the textbooks, but there are obviously justifiable circumstances where individual freedom must be constrained, not least to enable true entrepreneurship and individual freedoms. We need protection of property rights. We need the enforcement of contracts. We need secure borders. We need clear democratic mechanisms in order to set in place the conditions of the possibility of free enterprise and free trade.
Thank you very much. Next question.